A lot of genres have been created through the mixture of other genres that came before it. For example, blues and country made rock and roll for artists like Elvis and Chuck Berry. Blues and jazz developed swing for people like Frank Sinatra. But today, it's not that at all. Today we're looking at all those yummy jazz music theory ideas. They're so complex they get less action than your dad after the divorce. But without further ado, let's get straight into it with the first one, tritone substitution. First of all, I just want to say I'll be demonstrating all of this on piano, because it's much easier to visualise than on something like guitar. Okay, so first of all, what is a tritone? This is a scale, and it's comprised of whole tones and half tones, as you probably already know. But what a tritone is, if you break it down, tritone, it's going 3 tones above the root, which in C major's case you get F sharp. As you can tell, this is used in metal and jazz all the time. As you can tell, this is a dissonant interval, which is really good because it provides that tension and release, as you've probably seen in my last video. But because the tritone is situated only one note away from the fifth of the scale, it resolves perfectly. If you're familiar with modes, you'll also know that this F sharp is also in C Lydian, which gives it that really floaty feel as well. But in this instance, we're not using it as a note, we're using it as a reference point to build greater tension. If you didn't know already, the fifth of C is G. And if you play a G7, that resolves perfectly to a C, because that tension with the seventh resolves perfectly down to the major third. But what if we want to have more tension with this? First of all, we want to know, what is the tritone of G? And here we have a C sharp or a D flat. Now, if we try and play G7 to C, but if we substitute this dominant chord to its tritone counterpart, listen to how this sounds. Pretty snazzy, right? This tritonal substitution, as you probably would know listening to songs if you don't listen to the crap new stuff, is used quite a bit. Anyways, to start this video, I've just been talking about using one chord. Why don't we spice it up a little bit and stack chords on top of each other? Say we've got a C major in our left hand. Why don't we play a cheeky G major in our other hand? Sounds pretty cool, right? Now this is known as a polychord in its simplest form, because we're playing one chord and another chord over it. Poly, multiple, chord, you know, you get it. Now that C major with a G major over the top of it can be seen as a C9, but instead let's look at it in a polychord way because it gets a little bit more complex and weird sounding. So let's try and play a C major, but add its tritonal counterpart on top of it. See what that sounds like. Sounds pretty funky. Now you could call this, oh god, let me figure this out, C7 flat 9 sharp 11? But it's much easier just to write it as F sharp over C. Crazy, right? But anyway, that's polychords in its simple and a little bit more complex form. Okay, thirdly, quartal and quintal harmony. What the hell are those words and what do they mean? Well, without knowing it, you use something called tertiary harmony. This is where we build chords based on thirds. So like in C major, you build a major third and then a minor third on top of it to get C major. If you want to add a seventh, you can add another major or minor third. And same with a ninth, same with an 11th, same with a frickin' 412th. But you probably wouldn't use a 412th. Unless, no. But anyways, that's tertiary harmony, and you use that already. But why don't, instead of stacking major and minor thirds, why don't we add fourths and fifths to make chords? So instead of playing C, E, G, if we go up in fourths, what do we have? We have C, then we have F, then we have B flat, then we have E flat. The cool thing about quartal harmony is that when you play the first one that I just played, which is a C with an F and then a B flat and then an E flat, if you smush them together, you'll realise that it's not quite tertiary harmony, but it still shares similar characteristics. Like that chord has a minor third and a minor seventh in it. Now that I've explained that, why don't you try explaining quintal harmony? You know what, that sounds about right. It's the same thing, but you're just stacking fifths on top of each other. So take C, you go to G, you go to D, you go to A, you go to E, you go to B, you go to F sharp, and then you go on forever. But let's just stop at A. Congratulations, you just made a 6-9 chord without the third in it. You know what they say, if you've got a 6-9 and there's a third in it, you probably should have locked your door. But anyways, these chords can be used similarly to quartal harmony not as its own thing, but to add on to the tertiary harmony that we already use in music. Okay, the final one, the Super Locrian scale. What the hell is Super Locrian? Why do I need it? Well, first of all, it's known as the altered scale. Second of all, it's used over dominant chords, which we looked at in tritonal substitution. So first of all, what purpose does a dominant chord have? It builds tension, so the resolution back home is way better. So some jazz people thought, well, more tension means sweeter resolution. Why don't we just throw in a bunch of random notes together into a little hat, mix it about a little bit, and just pull out random notes. Let's see how that works. And they did, and that's practically how the altered scale was born. So let's stick to our C, because that's easiest to show on here. Let's play our G7, which is supposed to resolve to the C. But now, to add the most amount of tension, why don't, instead of just playing the G7, we play a little scale over it? Now usually you'd think, oh, G makes Lydian because we're in G7. No. Why don't we add the root, the flat second, the flat third, the major third, also the flat fourth, but you get C flat in this case, which is a little bit weird. You get the flat 5, the flat 6, and the flat 7. So it turns out you'd have G, A flat, B flat, C flat, call it a B, D flat, E flat, F, and then back to G. Pretty weird scale, right? But if you play it in context, it doesn't sound that bad, does it? And I'm sure if you play that during a band rehearsal, then everyone's probably gonna either kick you out, get on their knees and start praying, or they'll start throwing holy water at you. And watch out, that stuff really burns. But anyways, that's enough of me talking. That's 4 new music theory stuff that you know, and 4 new reasons why you're probably unemployable. But just remember, if you go into a job interview and someone says to you, could you tell me what the Super Locrian scale is? Then you can tell them and get forcibly removed by security. So if you're into that stuff, go for it. If you're not, maybe just keep it in the back pocket. But I hope you learned at least something new. And without further ado, I've got to go back to kicking a brain rot kid who keeps saying 6-7. Yes, I'm talking about you, Timothy. But luckily Timothy was polite enough to be quiet during most of this video. But anyways, enjoy your day, go practice, and always give a man a fish. Never teach him how to do it himself. Bye-bye.